A clip of Joe Rogan went viral because it's sort of him contending with, and this is my language to describe it. I don't know if he would describe it this way, but the fact that Trump lied. Shocking, right? But specifically on something highly consequential, which is his immigration policy. Because what would he say? First, he would always act as he constantly does, like he wasn't going to throw out due process completely and violate people's basic rights and punish innocent people for the crimes of others. But also, he would always specify, and his defenders would say, these sort of draconian policies were out there floating. Those are just for violent criminals who have entered the country illegally. Violent criminal, dangerous, public safety threats, right? That's what they would say. And instead, because of the ambition for a photo op, they ended up sweeping up innocent people. There's compelling evidence to demonstrate, throwing out due process, ignoring the law, and illegally deporting people who are not at all who they're being alleged to be. And Rogan, in the clip that you're going to watch, is kind of struck by that, as any decent person would be. We all want folks who are public safety threats to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. What Trump's doing instead of that is, for the sake of a disgusting photo op, being so hasty that innocent, law-abiding folks get punished. So in this clip, you're going to see we've talked a lot about the makeup artist, and Andre is his name, and the guy that evidence seems to demonstrate is a lawful immigrant and is not a criminal and is not in a gang, but just had a tattoo that was misidentified and is now in this El Salvador prison camp. And even Joe Rogan, who platformed Trump so much, seems to be realizing, this is my language, not his, that Trump lied to him when he said this was just about making people safer, or it was going to be violent criminals, or Trump lied. That was a lie. Whether even Rogan would acknowledge it or not, what he says here is demonstrating that is not what this is actually ending up being.
Bust them.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big number. 94% is good. So there's still people coming through.
Yeah.
And there's probably still people coming through that are criminals.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, like, you got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting, like, lassoed up and deported and sent to, like, El Salvador prisons, like that kind of shit. Because I read some story. Was it Glenn Greenwald?
It was.
Yeah. The gay barber guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's scary, man.
Is that true? Is that story accurate?
I don't think we know.
Can you explain the story for people that don't know?
Well, from what I read, I think it was in Time magazine, Jamie, if you can pull it up, and maybe we can get it accurate. But basically, with a bunch of these Trinidad guys, allegedly they got at least one guy who wasn't a criminal, who was just a gay barber, who I think, according to the story, came here legally. He was here legally. That's what they said. Don't know if it's
true. Did he have a green card?
I don't know what the details are. Maybe Jamie can find it.
No criminal record.
From what it said in that story. Now, this is the problem, right? Because the mainstream media has been putting out so much shit that I don't know what to believe anymore, right?
I feel the same way.
And so it's difficult, but it's something that we actually brought up in one of our conversations. We interviewed the guy from the Heritage Foundation. We brought this up because I think we talked about this with Doge as well. When you do things quickly and you do things aggressively, that's how you get shit done. But that's also when mistakes get made.
Right.
And I think a human being being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once.
Yeah.
This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific, and that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get...
Yeah. So horrific is the word. And realizing that the outcome of what Trump is doing, he's about to go on to say what the cause is. Yeah, that's what Trump said, which was a lie. What he's doing is throwing out due process. And that's why you heard the guy he's talking to say, this is how you get things done, or sometimes you make mistakes, but it's bad that it led to this. No, but see, that's not how you get things done. In some cases, I know what you mean. You got to go fast, whatever. Certain tasks that maybe aren't a human life. But in this case, we're not talking about, oh shoot, they did everything right and then someone got deported and it was mistaken. It was, we are announcing that we're suspending due process with the Alien Enemies Act. And when that happened, we didn't even know the story of Andrew was going to come up, but we did, right? We didn't know it was going to be him. We didn't know that particular. We didn't know when. But when it immediately happened, why did I immediately oppose it? Because I didn't want a violent criminal to be taken off the streets? No. Because when you throw out due process, you end up necessarily eventually hurting people who don't deserve to be hurt and punishing the innocent for the crimes of the guilty. That's why we have those protections. That's why we value the protection of innocent people so much. And so Rogan there is realizing, to his credit, that that's bad. What's happening? Now it's time to muster a little bit more passion to understand why it's happening and the fact that it is an inevitable byproduct of the path that Trump chose to pursue this policy through, which was predicated on the total dehumanization of a group, not just the people that he's talking about, and then the throwing out of our system of laws. Now, as this gets worked through the courts, we're in kind of a limbo. This is now on a different individual that the Trump administration came out and said, oh yeah, we made a mistake, sorry, and then went, but actually he is a violent criminal, but then there's no evidence of it. But so this is not Andrew, this is somebody else. BBC reports President Donald Trump's administration has asked the Supreme Court to block a lower court order requiring that a man deported to El Salvador be returned to the U.S. A federal judge in Maryland ruled the government must bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back by Monday night. The order was upheld by an appeals court on Monday. So it looked like that ruling was going to stand, but as of now, the Supreme Court has now intervened after Trump requested that on Monday, temporarily pausing a court-imposed midnight deadline to return to the U.S. a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador. And that's an administrative stay, a move that will extend the deadline until the court hands down a more fulsome decision. The decision to temporarily pause the case, which is relatively common when the court is facing a quick deadline, means that Abrego Garcia, a Salvador national, will remain at the notorious prison El Salvador for now. So that is in limbo as the Supreme Court decides what to do there. Former Joe Rogan guest, Newsweek reports, calls out podcaster, sparks backlash. I want to play this. It's talking about Sam Harris, who's appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast and went viral for this clip, calling out sort of the Joe Rogan ecosystem and what the underlying problem is there.
Joe is a genuinely good guy who wants good things for people, but he is honestly in over his head on so many topics of great consequence, right? When he brings someone on to just shoot the shit about, how the Holocaust is not what you think it was, right? Maybe Churchill's the bad guy in World War II.
Is that Tucker?
Or he's got Dave Smith, being treated as an expert on Israel and Palestine and the history of that conflict and the moral emergency that came to the world's attention on October 7th, and what is appropriate to think in the aftermath of all of that, right? Dave Smith is the only reason why anyone knows what Dave Smith thinks about any of this is very likely because Joe had him on multiple times to talk about it, right? He's a pure misinformation artist and on top of many others. And when Joe talks to someone like Trump or Tucker Carlson or any of these other guys who lie as freely as they breathe and doesn't push back against any of their lies. In fact, in Trump's case, really fairly energetically helped put his lies into the most plausible possible shape. It is irresponsible. I mean, it is directly harmful. Our society is as politically shattered as it is in part because of how Joe has interacted with information. Again, I don't think this is, I think a lot of this is inadvertent. or maybe all of it's inadvertent, but it is also avoidable, right? He could actually take the responsibility that really is his to take at this point to get his facts straight. And
yeah, that's why I'll stop it. So this did spark a lot of outrage, but he's absolutely correct. I mean, that this is, the phrase he used, I think this kind of proves an interesting point. The brand of, or the type, the category, the niche of podcast that is a shoot the shit podcast, right? That's the phrase that he used, where it's just sort of guys talking, And it's interesting. I listen to some of those podcasts, just dudes or ladies just talking about life, right? There's a certain casual, you feel like you're listening to friends, and just chill. That's fine. But that on highly consequential topics that take some level of being informed, it's not that you can't just talk about those things. You can. But we all, and I say we because this is also what I do, not to the platform that Rogan does it, but we all speak to to large audiences and have a choice. And there's a burden there. You don't have to care about that responsibility that you have to not mislead people, but I think that you should. You have the right to be careless, but I think that it's careless. But it's justified by, we just shoot the shit. That's what we do. But you bring on people, and this is what has created an environment, an echo chamber that allows for false ideas to become really mainstream, is you bring on people who are sort of professional liars. Trump, for example. Trump knows that he's lying in many cases, and he does that professionally. And it brought him to the White House. So he sits down with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's doing with a friend, I don't bring in notes to prepare to fact check them, because so if I talk to a friend and we just chat, then I'm going to interview Trump and we're just going to chat. And I'm not going to be ready to debunk what he's saying or press him on things. And again, you can do that, but it is irresponsible. And same thing when you bring on any number of people who are wildly, maybe themselves honestly uninformed, or they're being dishonest. And there are a lot of podcasters now that don't see it as their responsibility to prepare and see if they're bringing on people, and if they either don't bring the person on or bring them on and handle it responsibly and be informed on what you're going to be talking about. But we know that I'm not insulting Rogan or his intelligence, because his defense of himself every time he gets something wrong is, I'm just an idiot. I don't actually know about these things. I just like talking about them. And that has become the perfect platform for the purveyors of misinformation, because they just reach out. Rogan goes, interesting. You have a different take on World War II? Come on, interesting. And then they are highly effective at delivering dishonest rhetoric, but Rogan's not effective at seeing it and deciphering it as dishonest, because he's just a guy who talks on a podcast and listens to people and his friends, and he just listens, and it's fun, it's talk. And then you get this millions and millions of people audience who hear things and believe them and go, this is all subconscious, but if Rogan's not pushing back, there must be some legitimacy. They speak really compellingly, which is kind of a thing that a lot of dishonest people do really well, is speak well. That's how the tool of rhetoric throughout history has been deployed for so many terrible causes. And so that's an important call out from Harris, because people need to be a little bit more cognizant of that, and just think about, when you're listening to somebody, is this person just kind of allowing an idea to flow, or does it seem like they're understanding the gravity of it and then engaging it with the necessary seriousness and being properly informed for it? So hopefully, I guess to conclude this, Rogan's little revelation there of, is it bad to throw out due process and punish random people unjustifiably, can lead to a few more of those acknowledgments. I'm sure the economic stuff will ultimately do it, but we'll see. Share your thoughts in the comments.